All right, Raisin Church. Well, welcome to a new semester of Groves. I hope you're super excited to be getting back together with some new faces and some old faces, and hopefully you've already made some connections and had some fun kind of with our fellowship night and got to either have dinner or play a game or do something to get to know each other. But as we start to look ahead to this next semester, I think you already know where we're going because we've mentioned it multiple times on Sunday morning. But on Sundays, we're doing Isaiah 101 as we kind of do the first level or first layer of our study in Isaiah. And this semester in our Groves, we're going to be doing Isaiah 201 as we kind of take another level deeper into Isaiah. And then through the semester, I'm going to be asking you to go to level 3, which we're going to kind of start basically today. And that's Isaiah 301, where I'm going to be asking you to read Isaiah personally and kind of spend some time on your own kind of going through the book. And so hopefully, like I've been saying on Sunday mornings, through those 3 different layers or 3 different levels, it's going to help you give you a greater understanding of Isaiah and what God is trying to communicate to us and to you specifically through Isaiah's writing. And hopefully it's going to lead us all into a deeper, more vibrant relationship with Jesus. And so as we kind of kick off this semester of Groves, we're not going to do any content today because you haven't read yet. So next week, that's the goal, is you're going to have read chapters 1 through chapter 8. And that way you'll kind of be able to come next week to your Grove and be able to unpack kind of what struck out to you. Well, I'll give you a couple passages that I really want you to kind of drill down on and kind of discuss. And so this week it's really more introductory and trying to get you on course. And so I think, as we've been saying, if you remember even on week 1 of this whole series, is Isaiah is a super critical book. It's probably one of the most important books of the Old Testament. It's quoted more than any other book of the Old Testament besides Psalms in the New Testament. Jesus refers to it. Peter refers to it. Paul refers to it. I think as you're reading the New Testament, you might pay more attention now at the footnotes and see how many times Isaiah is mentioned. But it's also kind of a big book. It's a foreboding book. It's kind of a mysterious book. It can be a cryptic book. And so I want to give you some keys. Hopefully you've already caught on to some of this on Sunday morning, but I want to give you some keys to when you're diving into it personally in Isaiah 301 that will help you, again, kind of like not get stuck on certain things. And so the first thing, I've mentioned this multiple times, is that I think when you're looking at Isaiah and when you're looking at prophetic books, a lot of times you really need to kind of understand that it's more like an impressionist painting. And I want to keep mentioning this because as you're reading it yourself, you're probably going to come to certain things and you're going to be like, well, what is this talking about? And what's the specifics? And who exactly is this? And when is this going to happen? And you're going to want all the details. And again, Isaiah, even John, when he writes Revelation, they're not writing to give us an exact roadmap, like here's every single thing you're going to know and that you're going to be able to pick this thing apart and understand it completely. It's meant to give you an impression. And so as you're reading, don't get stuck on the details in that sense. Just kind of ask yourself more, what's the overall greater impression that's being painted that God's trying to communicate to me through the book of Isaiah or through Isaiah's prophecies? So don't get stuck on that. Another thing that I think will help you, we mentioned, is the multi-pane glass idea. And this idea that when you're reading Isaiah, sometimes it's hard to distinguish. Well, what is he talking about? Is he talking about things that are in his immediate future in 722 BC or 586 BC? Or is he talking about things that are still to come for us? And so some of the stuff he's writing about is in our past, his future, and some of the stuff he's writing about is in his future, but also our future. And so it can be kind of hard to sometimes distinguish, okay, what's he talking about here? And to make it even trickier, sometimes he's talking about multiple layers at the same time. And so something that happened 2,700 years ago is kind of a reflection of something that's still to come in our future. And so I think sometimes when you're reading, don't get stuck on that. Don't get put off by that. Sometimes you're going to be reading things and you're like, I don't know what this is talking about. Is this talking about, even some of the stuff that's in our past, but in our near past? Because he's even going to talk about events that involve Israel. And Israel being formed as a nation, which actually happened in 1947. Again, our past, their distant future, but not in our distant past. And so some of the stuff he's talking about there, or is he talking about when Judah was brought back into the land after the exile? So sometimes he's kind of referring to, something that happened in 500 BC, but also something that happened in 1947 AD, and it kind of is a reflection of things that will happen even in our future. So I think if you're trying to get all the exact details, you're going to come out of it confused. Again, the idea is overall impression. And to make it even more confusing, sometimes he's saying things, and this is true of Jesus as well, are you to take these things literally or to take these things figuratively? And so is this like something he's sharing symbolically, or is he saying this is actually exactly what's going to happen? Because he's going to say some pretty rough things, and you're like, is this literally going to happen, or is he just trying to paint this overall impression of these are the kinds of things that are going to be happening? And so again, don't get lost in the weeds. Don't expect that you're going to understand everything that you're reading, or that you could understand everything you're reading. Just go for the bigger impression. And I think if you kind of have that mentality going into it as you're on Isaiah 3:01, reading it yourself, the first 8 chapters this week, the next 8 chapters the week after that, and so on and so forth, then that's going to help you not get stuck and not just to be like, I don't know what this thing's talking about, and kind of throw your hands in the air. Just look for the greater impression. And then as we come back together each week, we'll be able to unpack some of those. I'll try to unpack maybe some of those things that aren't, maybe you don't, it's kind of hard to understand, but maybe if with a little bit of help, it might help to clear it up. But our goal in this study is not to understand every single passage, every single verse, every single analogy, every single imagery in the book of Isaiah. We're going big picture impression. And I think if you kind of will go with us through this process in Isaiah 101, 201, 301, then you're going to come out of it with a greater appreciation of what God has written to us in Isaiah. So as we kick things off, I hope that will help you. Again, your assignment, if you will, your homework for this week is Isaiah 1 through 8. And then next week when we gather back together, we'll unpack some of it, not all of it. We'll unpack some of it, some of the highlights, some of the things that really strike you, kind of maybe take note of that. And then when you come back next week, we can talk about those things. So I think it's going to be a great semester. I hope you're excited. But for this first week, that's just where we're going to leave off. And so next week, get your reading done, and we'll unpack the first 8 chapters next week.